Excellent. And welcome to Punch Kick Choke Chat. Happy New Year, everybody. We're so happy to be back with you. My name's Sean Benson. I'm one of your hosts. And whether you're watching this live on Zoom, live on YouTube, or at a later date on YouTube or listening on the podcast, we're super happy you're here and super happy you're back with us. I'm so excited for our guest tonight. But first, it falls to me to introduce Sensei Nicholas Suino. He is an 8th Dan in Iaido, a 6th Dan in Jiu-Jitsu, a 6th Dan in Judo. And, you know, one of the joys of this show is getting to know our own senseis. I've known Sensei Suino for, I'm going to say 25 years. It could be 23. And it wasn't until we did the show I realized what an absolute legend he is. Now, he's going to balk at that. But when you realize how many other people who don't have the privilege I have of being his direct student are maybe a little jealous of me, you realize what a wonderful opportunity you've had to train with someone who you're lucky enough to call a friend. Sensei Suino, Happy New Year, and how are you?
Happy New Year, Sean. It's great to hear from you. And I'll send you the check later for all those wonderful things that you were nice enough to say. I just can't wait. I felt like we were really close to being able to train in the same space. And that got taken away from us recently. But listen, fall down 7, get up 8. And that leads me to my introduction for Sensei Dauphin, Randy. I've been thinking about that saying, Randy, because you know, you guys have been shut down again as far as practice. We were shut down here. Our dojos were shut down for a couple of months a ways back and then restricted for a while. We're back happily to full participation. But I always tell the story of the evolution of fall down 7, get up 8. I used to think that just meant every time you get thrown in judo, you stand up. But I began to realize over time that I really think what it means is without falling down 7 times, you can't continue to get up. You need adversity to really prevail in life. And so however horrible this struggle is for you right now, I'm thinking it's good in the long run. And I know, Randy, because I've known you for many years, that you'll prevail. How are you doing? Happy New Year. And what's going on, man?
I'd say, listen, lots of things have happened through the pandemic that I'm really proud of. I mentioned it before, like I got my Yondan with you in Iaido. We did World Martial Arts Live, which was a global thing. Like we've done so many cool things through the pandemic, but a couple of things happened that have never happened as far as when I'm an instructor. So you said when I was there, you're the instructor who can grow a program or you can't grow a program, right? Like, and through the pandemic, my program has grown. And even in the lockdown now, so we're locked down again for another 3 weeks. We have like 99% of the people who joined in the fall, even after the lockdown, followed up and still joined for this 3-week period. So I'm really proud of that. And so I'm doing good. Like I just had a class in here with maybe 12 or 15 people in it. Maybe, I don't know, like allegedly. I'm not going to say if I did or I didn't, but
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, it might have just happened like 15 or 20 minutes ago. There might have been a whole bunch of people standing behind me. Maybe, I don't know. I won't confirm or deny. Before I move on to introducing Sensei Maloney and Sensei Legacy, I just want to say that one thing also happened that, you know, you're talking about training in the same space. But if people are not aware, on December 18th, I was able to cross the border, go into the United States, go into Michigan. When I arrived at Sensei Suino's house, the garage door miraculously opened. I was welcomed into the house. There was a bed waiting for me. There was food there. There was drinks, lots of great people. We did lots of great martial arts. We did lots of karate, lots of Iaido. We went and drank amazing coffee at Rue's Roast. And really, like, you know, we talk Sensei Suino about the joy and the pleasure. Like, the joy is knowing you doing this just constantly. That whole weekend was just a pleasure. Like, that was a highlight, just a pleasure, just a pleasure. Seeing Miller, seeing Holland, getting to give Pam a big hug. I haven't seen Erica, your daughter, in 2 years. Getting to see how much she's grown over 2 years. What a fine young woman she's becoming. I'm blessed and I'm so grateful to have had that opportunity. And I just want to say that publicly right now before we move on. So I'm doing great, Sensei, and you're a big part of me being great and doing great. So I'm also excited tonight to introduce probably the most primary influence in my entire life, which is Sensei Legacy. From the time I was 18, he's been guiding me, hugging me, punching me, kicking me, scolding me. I'm so blessed. My parents are dead, but I'm happy I have one parent still left, which is Sensei Legacy. Sensei Legacy's at 10th Dan. He was awarded that by another amazing man, Anthony Sandoval. Like Sensei Maloney, he's a member of the Canadian Black Belt Hall of Fame. He's an author of this book, The Elite Fighter. And I never do it, but I mean, Sensei Suino is a multi-time author too. And this is like one of my favorite publications. You can see all this stuff in here. I read it like weekly. In addition to that, Sensei Legacy has been a student of Harold Warden, Benny Allen, Richard Kim, and also he has achieved his Shodan and Iaido from Sensei Suino. So he's a granddad, he's a great granddad. And one of the things as far as a fighter goes, for me, almost every single thing I've learned about being a fighter is from Sensei Legacy. And that was a weekly thing, sometimes multiple times a week, where we would get together, fight for like an hour, 2 hours. And I'm not saying like, that wasn't like for a year or 2 years. That was for like a 20-year period. I would get up on Saturday morning at 5:30 in the morning, drive from Kitchener to St. Thomas, pick him up, go to the dojo, fight. And then there was a period where we didn't fight for about 13 years. And then I turned 50. And I decided for my 50th birthday that I would fight any 50 people who wanted to come and fight me. And Sensei, for 2 minutes on, 1 minute off, any 50 people. And Sensei Legacy said, that's a great goal. I want to be number 50. And so I'm super proud that it's been 13 years, but right back there, right behind me, where that big crest is back there, just about a month ago, him and I moved around for 2 minutes. And I will tell you, it was like old times. It was like pulling on the oldest pair of comfortable boots. It was like putting on your favorite pair of jeans. It was just like old times. And one thing I know is it's not going to be the last time. Sensei Legacy and I are going to do it again. I know that. After I was done, I knew that it was going to happen again. So anyway, that's my introduction for Sensei Legacy, who I love very much. And now I'm going to introduce Sensei Maloney. And first I want to say happy birthday to Sensei Maloney, because it was his birthday on December 21st.
That's right.
I want to just say happy birthday to you, Sensei. Fellow Sagittarian, we're both. Sensei Maloney is a 10th Dan who started his training in Boston at the Mattson Academy under George Mattson, and as well under Van Canna, who was his sparring instructor. He is the very first Uechi Ryu black belt in Canada, and he is the very first person to ever introduce Uechi Ryu to Canada. He's a member of the Micmac Sports Hall of Fame. He's a founder of the First Nations Tribal Justice Institute, which is responsible for training hundreds of First Nations people across Canada. As I mentioned already, he's a member of the Canadian Black Belt Hall of Fame. He was inducted the year before Sensei Legacy, but he received his induction in 2018 when Sensei Legacy received his. Sensei Maloney is an official representative of the Okinawan Japanese for Canada and the Uechi Ryu Karate Association. He's also trained more than 16,000 students internationally, as well as trained and developed hundreds of full contract fighting champions. From 1967 to 1973, he was one of the most feared fighters in the East Coast of the United States, as well as was an undefeated New England champion in free fighting and cement breaking competitions. A tournament champion in all categories, kata, breaking, and fighting. Sensei Maloney was the first to achieve black belt rank in Uechi Ryu, as I said, and the first person to introduce it to Canada. A couple of things I want to say personally, I always like to give a couple of thoughts. I want to say that Sensei Maloney is super easy to talk to. I've talked to him 3 or 4 times in my life, and it's always been an easy conversation and easy to chat with him. It's interesting, you go into a wormhole when you start doing this research on these people that we're talking to. And I know that when he was in Okinawa, he went to the grave of Kanban Uechi in Okinawa, just like Sensei Legacy went to the grave of Matsumura, our founder of our style. So I always look for commonalities, that we respect our ancestors and we went back there. Listen, I want to say something. I don't know anybody who could say this, but Sensei Maloney can say this. Did Bruce Lee ever walk into your dojo? Did he ever say he wanted to fight with somebody in the dojo? And were you the one who said, I'll fight you, and stood up and got up there and moved around with Bruce Lee? Well, that happened with Sensei Maloney. Bruce Lee showed up in his dojo. Bruce Lee said he wanted to move around with somebody, and Sensei Maloney was a person who stood up and said, I'll move around with you. That's pretty incredible. I can't, before I turn it back over to Sean, I just can't let it go unnoted. One thing that always stood out for me as a point of pride was that when Sensei Maloney was inducted into the Black Belt Hall of Fame, he talked about how he was treated in Canada and the United States in the 1960s and 70s, and how he said that basically dogs had more rights than he had. And I remember just feeling a little bit like aghast when he was mentioning that, and thinking, you know, that's a terrible thing, and I wonder where this speech is going. I was always proud to be a martial artist, but his next words made me so much more proud to be a martial artist, when he said, but when I went into a karate dojo, I was always treated as an equal, and I was always treated with respect, and I was always treated with dignity. And personally, for me, when he said those things, my heart grew, and I was if I was never proud to be a martial artist, which I already was, I was much more proud at that moment after hearing his speech. And that's my introduction for Sensei Maloney. And I want to turn it over to Sean now for our housekeeping.
Right on. I'm going to make this brief. Thanks, Sensei. I really appreciate it. It's great to be back with everybody. It's funny you mentioned, the similarities, because I actually wrote down I often talk about how if you're watching this show, you're watching adults have a conversation, and I have fun joking about how you might hear swear words. And if you have a problem with that, fuck off. But tonight I'm going the other way. We're in such a divided time. People are so doubling down on their own beliefs at the expense of listening to someone they might even love. And so I'm actually going the other way. If you hear an idea or a phrase or a way of speaking that you don't like, sit with it and look for the similarities, not the differences. When you hear someone talking who doesn't speak the way you speak or use the language you want to hear, look for the similarities, not the differences. That's where I'm going with this with 2022. We're going to use the show to heal up a little. We are so happy you joined us. I'm seeing the numbers rise as the interview goes on. We want your questions. So the benefit of joining us live is at the bottom, Robert, who's running the behind the scenes, he just threw up a please enter your questions for everybody. You should see that dot come up. So you're going to have questions for Sensei, fire them in, and we can't wait for your great questions, and we'll ask them for you. And we can't wait to hear the answers that the Sensei gives us. And then the last thing is we're sponsored by JMAC, the Japanese Martial Arts Center, Legacy Martial Arts, Shorin Ryu, and Sensei Dofa has the gear on tonight for PKCC. So tell us a bit about that and where people can get that, Sensei.
Yeah, I think it's Zazzle, right, Sensei Suino?
Yes, sir.
If you go on Zazzle, you'll be able to get any of the Punch Kick Choke Chat stuff, the t-shirts, coffee mug, anything you want with that. We're always looking for sponsors. I've always said all along, if you want to sponsor the show, it could be as simple as sending us a t-shirt, and then Sensei Suino or Sensei Legacy, we might be able to talk them into wearing that t-shirt for you from your dojo. Not me, I won't wear it. I'm going to wear JMAC, Legacy Shorin Ryu, or Punch Kick Choke Chat. And if you want me to wear one of your t-shirts, it's going to have to be something like extraordinary to get me to do it, because I'm a hard ass like that. So anyway,
$1 million.
$1 million.
Yeah. Thanks, Sensei. Really appreciate that. All right, let's jump into the meat. Sensei Maloney, how are you tonight? It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here to talk to you guys. Thank you very much.
Amazing. So I'm going to start off with the question that we start all our guests off with, and it's one of the things I'm most interested in. What was it like growing up for you before martial arts? What brought you into your first dojo, and what kept you there?
Wow. Well, I was born in after the war, 1945. I was brought home to the reservation on a horse and wagon, Christmas Day. I was brought up on the Indian Reserve. We didn't have any running water or any electricity. There was like four telephones in the community, and would have been the Indian agent and the RCMP, the government store, and the nuns' residence. Those were the 4 phones. So if you had to make a phone call, that's where your messages went in and out. Of course, I never ever used the phone. I never knew how to talk on the phone until I was a teenager, right? So you grew up living off the land. I trapped and hunted every day. I killed all my game with my bare hands, my bobcats, my raccoons, my porcupines, my fox, and my muskrats and beavers. I was never allowed to carry a gun, and so my hands were tools. And a lot of people thought that martial arts made my hands strong. They were strong before I got into the martial arts, because the body was like sinewed. I could grab a beam and hang on a beam like this without wrapping my fingers around and do a pull-up, just like that. Of course, I only weighed 35 pounds too, so it makes a big difference. But my hand strength, from cutting wood, sawing wood, carrying wood, lugging water, whatever you needed, you had to lug. You had to bring into the house. Our house wasn't obviously central heating. We had no windows. We had plastic and cardboard for windows. You got up in the morning and you went to school with no breakfast, no lunch, and whatever you could get for supper through my hunting, right? So that was life for a good 15 years before I ran away. But that's the way my lifestyle was, and I always dreamed of something different. I always wanted something different. My father was a veteran. My mom died when I was very young, so I have no memories of her, very, very little. I wasn't young when she died. I was 10 years old, but obviously the trauma obviously erased any memories that I had of her, right? I remember the funeral. I remember the wake, where we wake people in the homes. They still do that to this day. And I remember people bringing food. It was more of a comfortable thing to have food than to worry about that my mother was dead. It's just a sad thing to think about right now, even saying these things. And of course, my father was a veteran, and come back from the war. It wasn't the war. I mean, we had 93% of eligible Mi'kmaq volunteered for the Second World War. That's a lot. They were old. My father had a family. My father was 33 years old when he volunteered, and he had 8 kids, and he came back when he was 39 years old in 1944, when he got wounded by a blast, and had a injured leg and tunnel vision and loss of hearing and what have you. But anyways, it wasn't the war, it was how they were treated. Our veterans were treated poorly when they came back. They were equal while they were in the war, but when they came back, they couldn't go to the Legion, they couldn't vote, they couldn't buy alcohol, they didn't have any freedom of what the other veterans had. And so a lot of them turned to alcohol. They had no support, no counseling, and they turned to alcohol to ease their memories, I guess. And of course, I didn't understand that as a kid. I was quite embarrassed that my father was a drunk, and we were basically a Skid Row, very poor people, right? And we used to go to Maine quite a bit to work in the United States, and we pick blueberries, pick potatoes, live in little tar paper shacks and bare grounds for 3 or 4 months. And you'd always, the thing about that was you got to eat. You got to eat every day. You eat a lot of blueberries, you eat a lot of strawberries, you eat a lot of potatoes, whatever you're picking. but you did get a little bit of money. And I always dreamed of something better. You know, I had boils all over my body and malnutrition. I had rotten teeth. Those days we didn't have a dentist. You had a doctor and a nurse. The nurse just put you in a headlock, and the doctor put a knee on your chest and started pulling teeth out. You know, was aching. No painkillers or anything like that, right? So, and he'd ask you, how did I get it? You'd be thinking, you know, wow. You know, so it was very, very different lifestyle. Very violent, a lot of violence in my home, a lot of violence in and around my community, my members, family members, right? So today, out of the 28 childhood friends, I have 26 that are left, and they've been long time dead. You know, they all died violently, very young, right? From poverty. So, you know, I had an old radio that I found in a dump. In those days, they had tubes on them. And I hooked it up to a car battery, and I had an old rabbit snare going up side of the window upstairs. And I'd be laying there miserable. My stomach would be growling, and I'm cold. And poverty, you can't smell. You know, I could tell you about poverty, but you need this. People can't smell or feel poverty. You know, you can say, yeah, you're hungry or you're this or that, but there's a feeling that comes with poverty, and a hopelessness and a pain that comes with it that's gnawing on you morning, noon, and night, just day after day after day. You know, it's just, and there's a smell to it, right? And I put that radio on, and it was 2 stations. One was locked on because it was busted. There was no case on it. And Wheeling, West Virginia, and WBC Boston, 2 stations. So I put it on one, and then I put it on the other one in Boston. And Boston seemed to be my favorite one because the DJs were really active, right? And the DJ would come on, this is Wild Mansky, beat all the cats out there, rock break, time 5, off that, and I'd say, oh my God, what a happy place. You know, what a happy place. I'm going there. You know, I'm going to go there someday. So people be asking me when I'm 11, 12 years old, I'm going to Boston. So yeah, you know, pay no attention to me. So I'd be living in this little tar paper shack side the road in the woods in Maine. And I hear these trucks going by year after year after year, going by, year after year going by. And then when I was 16, we had a miserable summer. We had no money. I couldn't go back to high school. I told my dad I can't go to school. I had no clothes. I said, I can't go back to school, Dad. I said, I can't. He said, well, I really wanted you to try to make it. And I said, no, I can't. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I'm going to Boston. He said, you are? I said, yeah. So the next morning, I got up and I went out to the side of the road, and I could see him sitting at the campfire there. And I knew going to the right was towards Boston. And I put my thumb out and I started hitchhiking, and I wasn't getting a ride. And I kept looking back at him, and I was getting weaker and weaker. And finally I yelled at him. I said, Dad, I'm going to go up on top of the hill where the cars slow down a little bit more. Maybe I'll have better luck up there. Because I knew if I stayed there another couple minutes, I would have went back, because he looked really, really sad and broken, right? So anyway, I got up on top of the hill and I got a ride. And the rest is history, right?
Well, so let's jump ahead. Thank you for that context. That's incredible. You know, it's such a specific life you're describing, and I know there's so much more to it, but it's unlike any of the guests we've had yet in some of those specifics. So thanks for that. What then brought you to that first dojo?
Well, actually, when I got to, of course, I didn't know how big Boston was. I had no idea Boston was like, 3 or 4 million people, right? I had no idea. And I had, my brother had wrote me a letter and had asked me to pick up a car part. So I went to this address at this place called Western Auto, to get a car part. And right next door, there was a karate school. Of course, I didn't know anything about karate. In them days, judo was the word, right? Karate was just a funny word. So the only thing I ever heard about karate was, I think it was Count Dante or something like that in the back of the magazines and the comic books, you know, the touch of death or the one finger touch of death and all that stuff. Anyways, I just took mental note of it. And I decided at some point I'm going to go back and check it out, right? So a few weeks later, I went back and I wanted to see about what the school was about. And the guy said, well, it's $90 to join. And I said, oh, well, yeah, okay. I asked him if I could watch, and he said, no, you can't watch. And so I had to leave, right? So anyway, it's just a minute. I got to put something over here and I'll be right back. You guys talk a little bit.
Okay, great. We've heard about Count Dante before, and I saw Hanshi Legacy, you and Sensei Suino really getting a kick out of that. Remind us maybe, Hanshi Legacy, who that is.
He was a famous martial artist who was a hairdresser, but he really had a lot of confrontations with other schools. Some people say he really was good, and other people don't agree so much. So I'll reserve my own. I'll just keep what I think to myself.
Sensei Suino, you going?
Did you guys heard about Count Dante before? Did you?
Yeah, he was a bit of a controversial figure.
Yeah, for sure.
Say that.
Yeah. He ended up dying or getting killed, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, somebody broke into his school, I think. Whoop.
There we go. I'm back.
Hey, I hope that was your phone falling and not you falling off your chair.
Yeah, Dante. Yeah, that was Dante messing me up here.
Anyway, Sean, one of the times I walked in the dojo, I had a goatee, and Sensei Legacy looked at me and said, "You look like Count Dante." I was like, okay, I don't know who that is, right? But then later, like, I would wear a goatee once in a while, and he'd say, "You look like Count Dante." And then I figured out who Count Dante was, and I never wore a goatee after that.
Enough said.
I'm surprised you know the name, because that's
I do.
You're right, Gary. That's the 60s. That's the 60s.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So, anyways, I left and I didn't have any money. They wouldn't let me watch, and it was very secretive. So I tried to save money working on the weekends. I was making like $1.10 an hour, and my rent was $28 a week, and I was making $42, and I had my girlfriend was pregnant, you know, so things were rough. So, anyways, I managed to save about 3 or 4 weekends. Well, 6 weeks went by. Every time I saved the money, it went. You needed it. So anyways, I managed to go again. I had, I think I had 35 or 40 bucks. I went back. And there's a different guy at the door this time. And I come up and I said, yeah, I said, I come to before. He said, yeah, $9. I said, well, I can't. I said, I gave money was all wrinkled up in my pocket. Like I had it there for 3 or 4 weeks. And I gave it to him, and it was like, I think $40. And he said, all right, okay. He said, but you're going to have to pay next month. And of course, I didn't know whether I'd be able to pay next month or not. That was like 20 bucks a month them days. I said, all right. Anyway, so he let me in, and then I said, can I watch your class? He said, well, you can only watch for a second. So he opened the door, and, you know, the stench that came out of that room was was crazy. They had those gi tops on. I didn't know what they were doing. They were all sweating and they were banging one another. And I said, wow, okay, I guess that's karate. So they let me join, right? So that was the start of it. That was in November '63. That's crazy.
And what kept you there?
Well, the money, obviously, I paid. Paid for a couple of months, so I didn't want to waste my money, and they certainly didn't give you any special treatment or everything was about secretive, and you're only taught by certain people to a certain level, right? So you just do very basic stuff, and then the next session, so the next 3 or 4 weeks would be something very, very basic. Back them days, it was it was really slow learning, right? And of course, no such thing as ranks. Everybody was a white belt them days, so you didn't know who was who in the class. And after 6 or 7 months, I started getting a little bit of recognition, right? People started seeing that I was there on 2 or 3 times a week on a regular basis. And one day I actually met Sensei Mattson, and I hadn't met him at that time. I seen him in different areas, but I always thought, well, what am I going to say when he finally says something to me or whatever? I'm going to tell him, oh, you got a nice school, or I enjoyed here. I had all these preparations, what I wanted to tell him. And so I'm changing up, and he comes walking by. Hey, how you doing? And I was so flabbergasted. I didn't say a word. Then I said, oh my God, he's going to think that I'm ignorant, that I don't want to talk to him. Everything that I practiced, I didn't get to say. But after about a year, I was started in his class, and within a couple of years, I started getting pretty good recognition, and started assisting and teaching and what have you, which was very, very big honor to be able to do that. And I'm very shy. I mean, I didn't have any confidence. When I grew up, the only white people I knew were the nuns, the priests, the Indian agent, and the RCMP. And they were all powerful. Any one of these guys could ruin your life forever. Just whatever they decided would happen or where you were going, they made the decision, right? And you had no say. Nobody would believe you if an Indian agent said you did something, or RCMP. You couldn't even get a lawyer to represent you. It was against the law. Get a lawyer to represent you up until 1957, right? So you're in big trouble, right? So you just went about your business. So anyways, eventually Sensei Mattson really liked what I was doing and my teaching style and what I was doing. And he took me in as a business partner. Imagine that, took me in as a business partner. I could not believe it. And when he offered me as a business partner, and I had to buy into the company, like a couple $1,000 or whatever, 2,500, I think it was, or it wasn't an amount that was impossible. There was no way that I could do that. And he said, this is a great opportunity. Bang, bang, bang. He told me all the things I could do, and I left. I actually cried. I left because I knew I couldn't do anything. I didn't have the opportunity. I couldn't do anything. So after about 4 or 5 days, he called me back in the office and he asked me, well, what do you think? And I was thinking, Jesus, he's going to think that, I don't think it's a good deal or this. And I said, look, I'll tell you the truth. There is no way that I can get that kind of money. He said, well, that's all right. He says, I'm going to give it to you anyway. Right. So he gave me 25% of his business. Amazing. And so I taught there and become part of the whole thing, and became part of the representation and up to school and what have you. And all I had to do was just continue fighting, and they flew me here, flew me there, paid for my trips to different areas and stuff. And when I decided to come back to Canada, 1970, he called me into the office and he said, well, he said, you know, I really hate to see you go. He said, but he says, we got to do our business. And I said, okay. He said, well, come back tomorrow. And he said, we'll see what we can do. So the next day I come to the office, he had a check for me for $11,000. Wow. I was just amazing. I was just amazing, you know, that what an honorable man, you know,
Wow.
that saved my life. Really, he saved my life, right?
What an incredible story.
Took me in and saved my life. You know, it was just, and Gary, you remind me so much of him. You know, if you had a picture of Sensei Mattson sitting next to you, it would look quite similar.
That's funny you say that, because Sensei Suino says all the time that his teacher reminded him of Sensei Legacy. And Sensei Legacy says that Sensei Suino's teacher reminded him of his father. That they
yeah, it's got that aura about them, right?
Could I ask you where you left from in Canada and where you returned to in Canada?
Yeah, Nova Scotia.
Okay.
Nova Scotia. So I ran away from the Indian Reserve when I was 16, and I came back. I never went back to the Indian Reservation, although my family all lives there, and my brother was a big-time chief there for years. I'm the district war chief now, but I haven't. Not that the opportunities for what I wanted to do wasn't there, so I moved to the city. I moved to Halifax, and of course, when I came to Halifax, I was the first black belt really to come into Nova Scotia. So, you know, it was crazy. I had 400 students and another 175 on a waiting list. It was phenomenal. You know, it was crazy. Back then days, you know, it was amazing.
Sensei, I want to jump in with a question, and then I want to throw it to Sensei Dauphin to get into a bit more specifics around your teaching and competing. But this seems like a good time to talk about this. You know, you came from a place where you fundamentally didn't have rights, and you go to this big city and you walk into a dojo and you're just one of many white belts. And years later, you're getting cut a significant check for a partnership from an honorable man. What do you attribute that to? Like, how did you find a place? What do you attribute that difference to?
Integrity, honesty, discipline. I was brought up in a Shaolin temple. My father made rules that whether you were sober or drinking, the rules were, it had to be held high. There was no such thing of taking something that didn't belong to you. In my community, the biggest thing that we had in my household was my father's axe. He had an axe. He had what's called a pole axe, blade on one side and a hammer back on the back side. I was a pole axe, and anybody wanted to borrow a pole axe, they would come to see my father because he had a reputation of having a very sharp pole axe, right? I mean, it's significant, but that's the way it is. And my neighbor down the street was famous for sharpening saws, hand saw, buck saws. And another one down the street, my uncle, that was famous for having a long gun 22, and somebody else had something else, and bang, bang, bang. So the material stuff that we had, and you had to honor what people had, and we shared what we had, and that discipline stayed with me throughout my lifetime. You know, I would starve before I'd admit that I'd take something from somebody or I'd steal from somebody. You know, I'd starve to death. That's just the way we were, right? You know, that was the honor. That was the honor that we had. And for whatever reason, mostly discipline reasons, my father would say, well, if I came home at 5 after 9, I'd be grounded for a month, right? And of course, I'd be, you know, and 3 or 4 weeks later, I'd say, Dad, there's a ball tournament going on. There's people coming in from all over the place. He said, oh, yeah, I seen the cars going by. And I'd say, well, once I finish my chores, do you think that I could go and watch the game? He said, well, let's go look at the wall. And on the wall, it would be marked off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I knew what the wall was going to say, right? We didn't have a calendar, but it was marked on the wall. And he said, well, what does the wall say?
Oh.
Well, the wall says I can't go. Okay. That's the way it was, right?
Mm.
But he kept me out of trouble, you know.
And it sounds like it helped you recognize that in other people too. So you found good people along the way.
Oh, of course. Yeah. So I guess honesty, integrity, hard work, discipline, those are the things that that I brought to the game.
Sensei Dauphin, I want to throw it to you to just get into a little more specifics of that 70s era, the competing.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time, Sean. Like, I'm listening to Sensei Maloney. Like, I feel really emotional about what he's saying, just based on my own family background and things that my grandmother said to me and my mother. Like, it just seems like very similar.
Yeah, you could move it back to the 30s, but this was happening in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I'm born in the 70s, so you were doing this stuff before I was born. But my grandmother was off of the nation as well. Like, she was, my great grandfather was the first person in my area to leave the nation.
Yeah.
And then my grandmother's father went back. So I'm listening to you talk, and I feel like I'm listening to some of my own family history. But so I find it hard to turn this back to martial arts. But I also know, Sensei Maloney, that you were like a terror when it came to full contact fighting. Like, you know, you only need to look at a couple of pictures of you back in the day to know that you're not a person. If you're faint of heart, you don't want to stand in front of you in 1975 and try and fight you somewhere, because if you're faint of heart, you might as well just pack up your equipment and go home. So I guess back in the day, how did you get into full contact fighting, Sensei Maloney? What was your first full contact fight? Who did you have to fight? What did you like about it? Where did that take you? Like, where did that take you, and why?
It was out of fear of getting hit that I fought hard. Out of fear of losing and getting hurt. I figured if I was the first one to swing, I had a better chance.
Well, fear is a good motivator, Sensei. That's Legacy says that all the time. Fear is a good motivator. Everybody who ever fought was afraid the first time they walked in, and every time.
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, back them days, there was no other option. As Gary will tell you, in the 60s, it was all full contact, right? There was no such thing as tag karate, or you didn't have no protectors on your hands or on your feet, you know. So, and the full contact rules were kind of crazy. You know, I remember I hit a guy in the jaw, and I seen him about 6 or 7 weeks later, and he said his jaw was all wired up, and he said, the doctor said that you powdered my jaw. I said, powdered your jaw? He said, yeah, it was like he had to put a mesh or something in there on his chin bone from a strike, right?
Who was your first full contact fight, Sensei Maloney, that you know, like that you can remember?
Of any value, of any names, I think it was Pat Worley, a big name. And then there was another couple of Jeff. Oh my God, he was a heavyweight, actually. I can't think of the last names, but there were so many of us on different teams. I was on the Northeastern United States team, and we fought Midwest, we fought Chicago, we fought the West Coast, we fought Canada in these different teams, right? So I was you're more on a team than as individuals. I think would be more. I mean, I remember we fought in Madison Square Garden a couple of times. We had we had like 8 rings going and ambulances going in and out all day long. concrete grounds you fought on. It was crazy. One time it was the referee was so bad, so biased, they made us all turn our gis inside out. You know, so you couldn't tell which style you was from. Of course, people knew who the hell you were. Like, I was seated a lot of times, right? So I didn't fight in the regular competition, but I'd be brought in I'd be brought into the semifinals, right? So it wouldn't be fair for us more experienced guys to be fighting fresh guys off the floor, right?
So listen, Sensei Maloney,
it was silly. It was silly because it's only for a freaking trophy. You know, get people getting broken legs and broken limbs and broken ribs, freaking stitches everywhere just for a trophy, right? No,
it's funny that you say that, just for a trophy, because a question just came in, and it came in from my daughter, Sydney, who we were talking about before we started the live broadcast. And I think it's a really good question. Her question is, how does your connection to the land make you a better martial artist? And how do you hope future generations of martial artists connect or reconnect to the land?
Wow. Well, I think values make you a better fighter. You got to have something to fight for. I mean, wars are fought over territory. Wars are fought over land. So values are very, very important. Who you are and what you believe in are very important, and honor. Those are what I feel really makes a fighter. Even today, you'll see fighters like, the Irish sis, or the this fighter, or the Italian stallions, or people connect with nationhood, because or Canada versus US, or Canada versus Russia, world championships, those types of things. So yeah, so there is a belonging, and a cause will make a person a much better fighter. If you don't have those values, you don't have those things to come home to, those principles that mean a lot for you, then you can't get over the hump. When things go bad, you'll give up. But if you got all those other support factors built within you, then you're like a gutter rat. You're going to survive, right? You've seen gutter rats. You walk by, you see him, he looks like he's half dead. Come back 20 minutes later, the bugger's gone, right? Not off the leg to get out of the trap.
Those thoughts, Sensei Maloney, that you're sharing right now, I feel like maybe in the beginning of your life, when you're that maybe, because you've talked about, like, I got to eat when I did this job, and these types of things. When did that start to resonate with you? Like, how old were you, or where were you when you started to think about those things? Honor, principle,
born with
having
it.
A history,
I was born with it. I was born with it. Yeah. So the legacy of my culture, my traditions and customs are that. And they were in my father, they were in my grandfather, my great-grandfather. So those principles were in my veins, were in my DNA, right? And I think that meant something to me. I'm just thinking about it now. I never ever asked that question before, but I think that we're born with that, as you are, and the rest of us here that are listening. We're born with those traits, and it's important to be connected to that history, to where we come from and who we are, right? It matters. It does matter to everybody.
Well, it matters to me that I asked you a question that has never been asked of you before. Like, I'm really, after tonight, I'll be proud of that. That's one thing I'll carry forward, is that But you know, Sensei Maloney, I guess going back to stuff that you did in the ring and full contact fighting, like any moments you have like of pride or where you got knocked on your ass and you got up at the 8th time, you know, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Where you did something that surprised yourself, or somebody did something to you that surprised
I got knocked on my ass enough that I had lots of splinters. So yeah, no, it's you don't even remember the knockdowns. You don't even remember the times that you lost. They don't register. They don't register with a fighter. You know, it's the going forward is what matters, and to continue going forward, the continued learning, and the continued confidence. Right, those are the things that really matter in developing a fighter. Right, if you spend too much time on the loss, you know, you can get blocks, mental blockages, and those types of things. And you know, if I have a fighter or a student that loses, I'll find out why, but we will not dwell on it. We'll use it as a stepping stone, as a lesson. L's for learning, right?
Yeah. Sensei Maloney, listen, because I know Benson's chomping at the bit. He has 10 questions he wants to ask you that he asks everybody. But before we get to the 10 questions, we've not had the opportunity yet to ever talk to somebody who is actually in the same room with Bruce Lee. And I just would really like, I just think as part of even your history, it's important that we talk about how did Bruce Lee walk into the room? What happened? What are your impressions of what happened? Just in your own words, like what happened?
Well, it was kind of funny because I can tell you a little bit after the fact. I had some childhood friends that I grew up with that later on came to Boston, and we would do things together, like, you know, visit and whatever. And of course, I never drank, smoked, or did drugs or alcohol in my whole lifetime, right? So I wasn't a person to go to the bars or anything. But my friends were, and they would come by and we'd play cards and do whatever over the few years. And they'd come by and say, well, my nickname was Jake. And they'd say, well, where's Jake? And they'd say, my wife would say, well, he's working. Oh, okay. Geez, she's working a lot. She's working lots. Well, of course, I was in the karate school or I was away at a tournament, right? So Bruce Lee comes to town. My two buddies come banging on my door with the Boston Globe and the front page of picture of me and Bruce Lee on the front page. They just couldn't believe it. They didn't know I was into martial arts. And here I am, you know, the Northeastern United States champion sparring with Bruce Lee on the front page of the Boston Globe. It was amazing. So the cat was out of the bag. But Sensei Mattson's dojo was the biggest dojo. We had like close to 800 members back them days in Boston, downtown Boston. So people from all over the world, when they came to the city, that's where they went. So we had martial artists from China, from Japan, from all over England would come there, different styles, and they'd come and visit and train and what have you, and the way they'd go. And they'd come in for sparring nights, and we'd all spar with them from all over the world, right? So obviously, when these movie producers decided they were going to come to Boston, they looked up and it was Sensei Mattson's dojo that was there. And they said, yes, he said, yes, we have some people here that can work with Bruce when he comes to the gym. And of course, I was the top fighter at that point. So they asked me to work with them. Right. So it was a more or less a publicity stuff. They had a lot of cameras and news media and stuff there like that. And so he did some interviews and he did some kicks at the heavy bags, and he did some push-ups and stuff. And then they wanted to see some sparring drills. So we did sparring drills back and forth where he was throwing techniques at me and I was moving away, and I'd throw stuff at him and he'd move away. And, you know, it wasn't an all-out grab, takedown fight, you know. But he was very, very fast, very quick. Bruce at that time would probably have been about 135 pounds. I would have been about 150 pounds. So I would have had a little bit of weight on him. But no, he was very, very quick, very fast. And of course, Bruce always wanted to have the upper show because he was the star, right? And I was actually a little bit starstruck as well because he was my hero from the Green Hornet, right? The series he had was Kato, the Green Hornet. So I knew him more from that than from the movies that he was getting into, right? So it was a great experience. And I seen him another time in Madison Square Garden. We just talked briefly. He remembered who I was. And then years later in his books, the pictures of are me and him sparring in his books. So he thought enough of that day to save those pictures and put them in his books. So I thought that was a pretty good thing. And I didn't realize that. I actually never mentioned meeting Bruce Lee, nor did I take any pictures or anything. All the while I was teaching my karate school in Halifax. I didn't tell my students. I didn't tell. You know what I mean? I didn't put a picture up with here's Jim Maloney and Bruce Lee, you know, for advertising. I never did any of that until a friend of mine sent me a picture. Well, I still never did to this day, but a friend of mine sent me a picture of him and I in one of his books. And that's when I realized, yeah, okay, that's, I didn't realize he kept those photos. And he was dead then by that time. I'll probably be in 78, 80 by the time I got that. But it was very, very, I mean, he made everybody wealthy in the martial arts back them days. He really gave martial arts a big shot in the arm. It was big anyway, but he made it bigger, right? And it was an honor to be able to meet him and to be there that day.
You know what's cool, Sensei Maloney, is a lot of people, if they were in your situation and they had the opportunity to fight with Bruce Lee and then they had the opportunity to talk about it after the fact, they would say stuff like, I kicked his ass, he wasn't that good, blah, 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 blah. And here you are, you know, you talk about honor, here you are just an honorable person talking about how grateful you are for the experience and what you gained from it instead of, you know, trying to belittle him. That's awesome. I'm super proud to hear you talk like that. Well,
you can't kick a dead lion. No honor in kicking a dead lion. Right?
It's funny, Sensei Dauphin, you weren't wrong. I was chomping at the bit, but I was actually going to jump in with that question myself before the 10 questions, because I was also chomping at the bit to hear about that. And it's so funny what you just said. I just wrote down humility. I'm like, Jesus, you know, some people would dine out on that for the rest of their lives. They practically forgot it happened, which is so cool.
Yeah, and that's the truth. I mean, my students never seen a picture of me and Bruce Lee on the wall. To this day, in my dojo right now, there isn't one. No.
Right on.
No.
Well, I'm going to hang one. I'm going to hang one in this dojo after tonight.
Well, they're in his books. You can get the pictures out of his books.
I already have the pictures, and I'm going to come find you and get you to sign one of those pictures.
I'm sure there were lots of pictures there, and would have been nice to see some of them, right? More than what was in his books. And I often thought, you know, I should write his daughter, or I should write. I think it's Little. What's the author? The author, I think it was, guy in England. Probably might have some pictures.
Yeah, we can figure that out for you, Sensei. If you want, we can get on the hunt for you if you want some of that.
No, don't make anybody uncomfortable. If I need them, I'll try myself. Thank you. Yeah, no, that was a nice thing that that we did then, and it was nice that he used those pictures in his books. It was awesome.
So cool. Sensei, it is now time for the 10 questions, which is what we ask all our guests. And we ask that you answer impulsively. This is the top 10. And then we can have you expand on your impulsive answers as much as you like. So okay. Question number 1, what is the most effective move in your martial arts arsenal?
I would say a forward punch. My hand speed was always better than my foot speed because it's an Okinawan style. So my hand speed was very, very fast. Had a lot of confidence in my ability to hit somebody when the target was at a specific distance. Because I learned early that action is faster than reaction, right? And so if I had rounds going that way, there's more chances of winning than having rounds coming at me. Right? So yeah. So foot movement was really important. Angles were really important. Don't go into front door. Don't go to the threshold. You know, that's a danger zone. I always sidestep to the side, come off line, and come in at an angle where you're coming in on your opponent's weak side, balance side, so that if there was if the strike failed, you were all set for a takedown. And everything had to be with a takedown. There was none of this exchanges of 10, 15, 20 punches between two people. You know, you were going down, right? When I got in there, whether I come in with a kick or you came in with a kick or a combination, you were going down. I mean, that was my specialty, right? Mm. So bang, 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 down you went. Bang, 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 down you went. You know, and that when I went to Okinawa, they sounded the drums, as you know, Gary. They're going to bring all the heavy hitters in, right? And so the dojo was very small. Master Uechi's dojo was, and classes were like 10, 12 people. And finally they said, when are you coming to the night class? I said, well, we're just climatizing. I want to get used to it. So I was going to 3 or 4 day classes. And I had already met Mr. Uechi prior in the States. And, you know, so I had a good working relationship with the master. And we showed up one night, the first night class, and there was 35 to 40 black belts from all over the island. So they were there to do business, right? Right. So, yeah, we had no problem with them. Obviously, we're a bigger and stronger, right? So it was fun. Yeah, I love that. And then after that night, Master Uechi had me teaching sparring every day while I was there.
That's fantastic.
Actually, he was very uncomfortable. He didn't like the fact that they brought in the troops to his guests. He wasn't very happy about that. And it's one of the very first times they did that, because me and another colleague of mine, Art Rabisa, we were New England champions when we went there. We had a reputation when we got there. So they wanted to give us a test. And obviously we passed the test because it never came back.
Who's the most influential martial artist in your life?
Oh, obviously George Mattson, Sensei George Mattson, of course. Yeah, I mean, he saved my life. I mean, the guy is just a phenomenal man. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Who do you believe to be the most influential martial artist of all time, and why?
Bruce Lee.
Right
and because of his abilities and the movies and the things that he's done and bringing things forefront, right?
What excites you most about the next 5 years of your martial arts training?
Passing over the reins, passing over the the teaching to my senior students. I think that's very, very important to keep that legacy going, right? I have a certain product that I try to develop, and we're still doing that to this day. I mean, I got brown belts busting baseball bats with their shins and their forearms and busting boards and fingertips and doing all kinds of crazy things that people seem to be getting away from, the conditioning and stuff nowadays. So we really continue to work on the conditioning and the strengthening of the body to give them that superhuman strength that a martial artist is supposed to have.
Right on. I hope you'll pardon how Eurocentrically this question's written. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you get there?
Good job. Good job.
Do you have a favorite film and television martial artist?
Bruce Lee.
No kidding.
What martial artist, living or dead, in all of recorded history, would you like to train with the most?
Bali Sloki.
If everyone in the world could have the greatest benefit you've gotten from martial arts, whether they train or not, what would that benefit be?
Ask that again.
If everyone in the world could get the greatest benefit you've gotten from martial arts, whether they train or not, what would you be giving them?
Honesty, integrity, humanitarian, kindness, respect, confidence.
We're just writing a lot of these awesome answers down if you're wondering what these pauses are, by the way. And the last two questions, Sensei, come as a pair. What is your greatest achievement and greatest regret?
Greatest achievement is my children. I don't have any regrets. I'm very happy with my life. I wouldn't change it. I'm a very spoiled individual today. I appreciate everything.
Thanks, Sensei. That's our 10 questions. I want to throw it to Sensei Suino right now, who got pretty stoked at the idea of body conditioning and pretty stoked at the idea of no regrets. So Sensei, I'm going to let you run with that however you want.
Thanks so much, Sensei. It's just, that was my answer too. You know, every day is a gift. And I feel like you're living that. I'm just getting that energy that, you know, we're so lucky. We're so lucky to be alive. We're blessed by having great careers in the martial arts. And like you, I'm thinking a lot about the legacy I want to leave behind. And
hold it, I'll be right back. I got to take a bathroom break.
Okay. Obviously, I was going on at length.
It wasn't the legacy you left behind. It was.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, you want to leave that alone.
We'll leave that sitting right there.
Yep.
Well, that's a first. But I got to tell you, for me personally,
In my jacket.
like I just feel so emotional through this thing as he's talking. Like I have these wells of emotion where I have to like just stifle this down as he's talking. It's really incredible. And I'm watching Sense Legacy, who like when he's talking about fighting and he's like, never come in the front door, shift to the side. And I'm like, and you guys can't see it, but I'm looking at Sense Legacy and he's like, I know he's looking at me and he's like, when did I fucking teach you that? And it's like, yeah, you taught me that when I was a green belt, right? Like it's just crazy to listen to this stuff and how our history repeats itself.
Really?
Sorry, Sensei Suino, like continue. Now Sensei Maloney's back.
Sean, you had teed up a specific question and I've lost the.
Oh, that's okay.
Lost the
You got
thread.
real excited about the concept of like superhuman body conditioning that we're supposed to have, and
Yeah.
also no regrets.
Yeah, well, I just think I think I agree that a lot of martial arts is become become a feat. There's what'd you call it, Sensei? Tag, right? Sparring is tag, and a lot of forgive me, but a lot of Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu and things are kabuki and not fighting. And I'm just a big fan of conditioning to make your martial arts better, but also the process of conditioning leads to those benefits that you talked about: honesty, integrity. That's the magic of martial arts, right? Is you make your body strong and it changes your character.
Mm.
Yeah. And I found that out in a very early stage, that you didn't have to study for 8, 10, 12 years to be able to do those things. I got brown belts, and after 3 years that are able to do great feats of strength. So this idea, how we were taught years ago, well, you can't do that until you're a green belt. You can't do that until you're a brown belt. You wouldn't get to do that until you're a black belt. It was like we were spoon fed, a little at a time. And I find that if I teach individuals to their level of whatever they can handle, then they progress so much faster. Right? And take what they bring. I mean, we had hockey players that are fighters. I mean, these are guys, that's their job on the ice, right? And then we bring them into the dojo, and then we say, no, you can't do it that way. You got to fight this way. I mean, if you let the guy go, he'd clean half of your dojo out, right? But because everybody's doing the basic rules and this, and you got to be punch here, and you got to pull the punch, and you got to, we were restricted a lot of people by doing so much regulated and controlled kumites that, the karate by numbers. And we had to get rid of that. We had to get rid of it. We had to make it real, right? And so now when I got somebody that comes in, got those types of fighting skills, I already got a fighter. I just got to teach them the techniques now, right?
So let me jump into that for one sec, Sensei, because when you're talking about those old days of fighting and the way you guys are hurting each other for trophies, the word that you used a number of times is crazy. And the idea of breaking a baseball bat on your shin is pretty arguably crazy. But at the same time, it seems like this is so fundamental to the martial artist you are and the martial artist you're building. So where's that balance?
Well, I guess it's up to the individual dojo how you're going to run your school. You've got to have a target. You've got to have a product that you're trying to develop right from the beginning, and the training's got to get to that point, right? And our goal really nowadays is not to make a champion anymore. My goal today is to make a legitimate black belt, is to make an individual that you can tell this guy is trained, this girl is trained. There's no false confidence. They can handle themselves, because there's a liability if you give somebody a skill and you say you're at this level and you're a black belt, and they go and they get the shit slapped out of them. It's going to come back on you, right? So the reality is that I'll not put a black belt on anybody unless I'm confident that they can look after themselves, right? I mean, that's just the way it is.
That's fantastic.
It means something to me, because you're paying me to make you a fighter, to make you a survivor, and that's really important. That's a big contract, man. This is not a money thing. I'm playing with your life, or maybe your family or your loved one's life. Where you think you have to do something where you end up being, hurt really bad, and the family gets hurt really bad when, if you had the confidence, you could have just walked away, or you could have had a situation. You had a choice. It wasn't a gamble. You weren't going in there in false confidence with thinking that you could do something, and in reality you couldn't. So
that's awesome.
Very, very important. I think that any school is liable when you say that a person has certain credentials, they goddamn well better have them.
Yeah, you're right, Sensei Maloney.
I agree.
Allegedly, an hour ago, I was standing in here and I said, I won't lie to you about your level. I won't tell you you should be a yellow belt if you're not a yellow belt. I won't tell you you should be a black belt if you're not a black belt. And I gave the example of my daughter's grading, where like after 2 hours, her final couple minutes was she got sidekicked through like a row of chairs, and Sensei Legacy is her godfather. And he said, I don't care who her dad is. I've seen enough. She's a black belt. Right. But like, no lying to people, right? Like no telling people that you are something that you're not actually, in your opinion, or my opinion, or Sensei Suino's opinion, or Sensei Benson's opinion, or Sensei Legacy's opinion. That's our opinion, and you take the money and make sure that you stand up ethically behind your opinion.
Well, interesting. I was teaching at a law enforcement seminar, which I do lots of, and they were meeting at lunchtime to train, and they one of the people said, well, come on down and watch the come on down and work out. I said, no. I said, I got a class I got to teach in the afternoon, so I'm not going to go down there. And then I said, well, I ate my lunch early and I went down. So they had these ballroom, and they had these carpets rolled up, and they were like 4 feet high, maybe 3 rows like that. And then they were actually doing elbow strikes, or practicing elbow strikes. Well, they're doing a bunch of stuff, but at this time they started doing elbow strikes, right? I'm standing there. So the girl said, can you hold this for me? And I said, yeah, I can. Oh, okay. I didn't have sweats on or anything. I just had my teaching clothes on. So I grabbed the thing, and she was doing really hit this thing good with the elbow strike. Bang, bang. I said, wow, that's really good. And I put it down. She said, well, can you do a couple at me so that I want to feel what it feels like? And I said, all right. So I went in and I just did a medium strike, boom, right, and knocked her a little bit out. She said, no, could hit it. So I stepped back and I jumped, bang, and I hit it, right? I drove her right over the 3 rows, was about 8 feet, right over it, up against the wall, bang, and she went down, right? And I looked up, and there's like 40 police instructors all looking down at me. And she gets up, and her nose is busted. Her mouth is busted because she was holding the pad and drove it into her face like this, right? And of course, I felt like shit. And I said, and the guy goes, no, don't worry. She's a kickboxer, and she was like number 2 in the world kickboxer. So and she said, oh man, that was great. But they really never had a martial artist, a real karate guy come in and do an elbow smash, right? They weren't putting the torque, they were just using the arm strength, right? The arm strength stuff. So they weren't experiencing that, right? So it was kind of funny. And then another funny time, I was teaching the NATO bodyguards out west. And of course, I taught the Pope's bodyguards, people that were responsible for the Queen's visit and all that stuff, right? So these police officers, there were about 60 of them in the class, and some were martial artists. And of course, they were every day, they were doing their little workouts. So they kept on asking me, I said, Sensei, can you come down to the workout? I said, no, and I didn't really want to get involved, right? I'm there to do my class and every day. So I finished the course on Friday, and I go down there in the room, and I'm packing my gear, and of course 4 or 5 of them come down. They said, we just want to ask you a couple questions. I said, yeah, okay. And I'm putting my stuff in. And then finally I said, okay, what do you like? one guy says, I said, well, what's your favorite punch? He said, well, I'm a Pan Am's Games winner. I won the Pan Am Games. I said, oh yeah. I said, well, what's your favorite technique? He said, a reverse punch, right? I said, oh, okay, great. I said, well, show me your reverse punch. So he threw a punch. I said, no, hit me with the reverse punch. Hit me hard as you can with the reverse punch. So he took one swing and it wasn't nothing. And then I said, no, man, put something into it, right? I just stood there with my head looking at him in a little bit of a stance. And when he went to throw the second punch, I just leaned a little bit into him a little bit. His wrist will pop.
Oh.
So then he said, well, yeah. And then of course he tried to hit me with a front kick, which was ridiculous. So one guy comes up and he goes, Master Maloney. I said, yeah. He says, what about aerial techniques? I said, well, okay. Aerial techniques. He said, yeah. I said, show me what you mean. So he jumps up in the air and he does a spinning back kick, bang, and then he drops back down, right? It was just like a comedy show, right? And it was a good kick. But now I know what he's going to do, right? I know exactly the height, distance, everything he's going to do. So I said, all right. I said, I don't know. I said, I don't know what I do. I said, anyway, do it again. Come on, throw the kick at me. So sure enough, he come running, jumped up in the air. I ducked underneath, caught him up in the air, flipped him upside down, right, by the belt. And of course, everything's falling out of his pockets, his knives and his change and everything. And I said, well, back home, this is how we get coffee money, right? And I dropped them down in the heat. So the non-martial artist there, who these guys are always intimidating, goes up to the guys and said, you know what? I'm not putting my stuff away, right? I'm listening. You guys look like fucking shit today. You guys embarrassed us. The guy goes, well, the guy's a master. That's what masters do, he goes.
Actually, that's true. That's a true statement.
Yeah. Speaking of
another time, I'm at another academy, and of course they all tease me today because I'm having dinner with like 600 of us. I'm having dinner with George Sylvain was there, a bunch of other people were there. George is a good friend of mine, and of course John Terriel, Terrian, and Jean Guy Angel. Do you guys know Jean Guy Angel? He was an awesome fighter, Montreal. And Harry Villeneuve, all those guys, right? They're all Canadian heroes of mine. I love them guys. And anyways, we're at this course and George was there. And the guy comes in and he calls me over and I thought something happened like to my family members or something. So this guy, this organizer of Monadnock come over and he said, Jim, he said, I need to talk to you. And he said, I said, oh yeah, what's going on? Everything all right? And he said, well, you have to leave. I said, leave? What are you talking about? Something wrong? He said, yeah, well, he said, the gunny, he's upstairs and he's really upset and he's angry and I don't know what he's going to do. And something you did or said or something. So in the meantime, Mattson Ayub, who's one of the top gunfighters in the world, he comes walking over. And he wrote a couple articles about me on SWAT magazine and Black Belt magazines and those things back in them days, right? So I go over there and he said, what's on? He said, I got to get Jim out of here. He said, Gunny, Marine Corps drill sergeant, Gunny, they call him. He's angry. I said, well, I don't know what I did. He said, well, you don't need to worry about Jim. Jim can handle himself. He can get as angry as he wants, right? That's what Massad is telling the organizer. He said, well, maybe if you apologize to him. So they escort me upstairs. 2 uniformed guys and the director and Mattson Ayub. We go up to the room and in the room, this guy is sitting there smoking a cigarette by the window, right? And now I realize who he is. You know, I look at him and they said, well, Jim's here. Come up to apologize. I said, no, I'm not apologizing to nobody for anything. I said, I don't remember doing anything in my heart, doing anything purposely, right? So the guys are there, okay, bang, bang, bang. So we go back downstairs, and apparently what happened was we were taking turns of people attacking, and I had a baton, and I had 3 guys attacking me, and I'm hitting them with the baton. They got this equipment on their legs and pads on them, banging them and banging them. So I guess this guy well, yeah, I remember now. This guy comes in at me, and I block him, bang, and I take him down and sweep him, right? And when he goes down, he's on his hands and knees. I put my foot on his ass, and I drove him right underneath a couple tables. And of course, I went on, continued with the other guys. I didn't pay no more attention to it, but I guess he was pretty upset that somebody would do that to him, right? And maybe if I knew who he was, maybe I may not have given that a little extra jump. I don't know.
Sensei, before we go around the horn, we got one last question, I think, from you, Sensei Legacy. Do you have something you wanted to ask?
Oh, this was great. No.
Yeah, I just Sensei wanted to make sure that you, Sensei Legacy, had a chance to, all this is percolating. I wanted to be sure that you had a chance to ask a question or provide a thought that you might have. That's it.
Yeah, I'm still sort of followed your career a little bit, as of late. We met at the Hall of Fame there, and I was interested in your background. As you know, I told you a little bit about mine. So I really wanted to know a lot more about you. And that's
me about you, Gary.
Yeah. I think at some point we'll get together and talk those things out in the background.
Yeah.
I really like
well,
that.
your background is Shurin-Ryu?
Pardon me?
Your background?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the Micmac thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But your style. Your style of
Pardon me?
Your style of martial arts?
We do Shorin-Ryu and we do Okinawan White Crane.
That's right. So they're very close in Okinawa, those organizations. They're very close in Okinawa with Uechi Ryu. Yeah.
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 Anyway, I was interested in you personally, just to hear your history and some of the things that you would have to offer us to learn by your experience.
Yeah. Well, things haven't really changed that much as you see on TV and on the news. We still have lots of disputes over lobster, over logging, over territory, over pipelines. Where the indigenous people are still the stewards of the land. We still care about the environmental issues of the land, and we're still trying to teach our visitors how to respect the land, and that it should be here for generations to come, for everybody to enjoy. And so a lot of corporations have problems with that. The corporations want to make their money now. They don't care what happens to the next generation.
That's
and
right.
so there's the longevity. We've been here for 15,000 years, and we want to be here for another 15,000. We're trying to tell people, slow down, just give Mother Earth a chance to breathe and catch her breath and heal up a little bit. Let's not continue to mistreat the environment as the way that we are for financial gain and greed. Yeah. That's awesome. So that's where we are still today. So we're still fighting the cause.
Well, we'll meet up and we'll have our own little talk there pretty soon.
I appreciate that, Sensei. Looking forward to it.
Right.
Sensei Suino, where do you want to go with your wrap up?
Well, speaking of that sort of thing, Sensei, I've been admiring the work of art behind your head during this conversation.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Actually, no, that was a gift.
Yeah?
That was a gift that was given to me. And it's beautiful.
It is.
Yeah. No, I wish I knew the story. I have lots of art around that I do have stories of. I'm a what we call when I receive a gift, I give the gift. So there's nothing that really would stay with me for a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
You know, somebody gives me something, and then I see somebody else that can use that. I mean, there's certain things that I've obviously kept, but majority of stuff comes through me and goes on to another person. See, we like to learn how to. It's just important to learn how to receive as it is to learn how to give gifts. Both are very, very important. You have to learn to be able to do both. And when an Indigenous person or Aboriginal person offers you a gift, whatever it is, as small or big it might be, take it, because it's very important for them to be giving and offering. And the same token, when they get something, there's a ceremony for receiving, just as important as the giving.
Well, I want to thank you for the gift of your story today.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate an opportunity to talk to you guys. And I know each one of you could spend hours telling me things about yourselves, which is where I learn. And you know, every student that walks in my door teaches me something. Every person I meet teaches me something, and that's why I like meeting people, because I'm thirsty. I'm a sponge. You know, if you do something that I like what you do, I'll copy you.
Yeah. Thanks, Sensei Dopan.
Listen, Sensei Maloney, this is going to take a second, because I like to write down things and prove to you that I've been listening to you while you've been talking, and I have received the gift that you've given us. So these are not in any particular order. I like that you said that you were training NATO people and they were doing their little workouts, right? So that made me laugh, right? And then in contrast, that you were brought to the reservation on a horse and wagon on Christmas Day. That's pretty incredible. And that you spent your first 15 years as a hunter just trying to sustain yourself. And, you know, people like Sensei Suino and I do it just for enjoyment now. We don't need to sustain ourselves, but we just do it for enjoyment. You know, just the stuff that you said about food, that, like, you know, even being at your mother's funeral, and that it was just more enjoyable to have food than even what was going on. Like, that's something that's a very impactful statement. People should think about that, who have all the food that they need and don't need to think about that.
Yeah.
You know, your father, you said your father was a drunk, Skid Row. It kind of reminds me, like, maybe not to that extreme, but very similar, right? When you talk about getting a job because you got to eat, things like you found a radio and you hooked it up to a car battery so you could listen to 2 stations. And today, like, people, it's just unlimited. They're on right now, they're listening to us, and there's nobody listening to us tonight who had to set their computer up with a fucking car battery to figure out how to hear us tonight. So, like, it's just crazy when I think about that. And I think one thing that really resonated initially when you talked about was poverty, when you said it's a smell, it's a feel, it's a taste. It's something that permeates every level of your being, right? And I can relate to that on different levels, right? I like that when you went to Boston that you were going to get a car part, and that's how you found a karate dojo. It's these fucking random things that bring you to karate that all of a sudden benefit all the rest of the generations because you needed a car part and you found a karate dojo.
Yeah.
Right? It's, you know, when you talked about $90 in 1963, that's a crazy amount of money in 1963.
Yeah.
Come up with $90. Like, that's
That would have been that would have been like 4 months tuition and a gi.
Right.
You know?
So not easy to get into that dojo, but you still found it and you still got in there.
Yeah.
When you talk about nuns, priests, and RCMPs, you know, I know Sensei Legacy will smile. Like, I mean, I had Catholic upbringing through grade school, high school, uniforms. I remember Father Zacher tackling me, chasing me down in the hall and tackling me because I had an earring. And he had told me 3 times to take the earring out of my head. And so I have some relation as to how they had ultimate power and how you couldn't fight back against that. You know, when you said that when you were offered the opportunity to have a partnership in the dojo, and you left and you cried because you cried because you knew you couldn't come up with that money. But then in the end, he gave you 25% of the business anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's fate. Like, that's fate reaching out. And then in the end, when you came back to Canada, you got an $11,000 check because you found an honorable man and you worked with that honorable man and you were honorable and you were honest with him. Super cool. First black belt in Nova Scotia, probably one of the first black belts in Canada, but for sure, first one in Nova Scotia, right? I like that you said that your father had a sharp poleaxe, right?
Yeah.
And that that he had rules and those rules had to be held, and that was it. Like, it made me feel good about the way I am as a father, because sometimes my kids have not liked when I said that these are the rules and this is how you have to be. And so hearing you say that makes me feel more confident as a father. Yeah. You know, you fought in Madison Square Garden, and the UFC was not allowed to be in Madison Square Garden for like until like 5 years ago, right? Like 10 years ago. I really like that you said you're born with your history.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it that way, that you're born with your history. It's just ingrained in you from the moment you're born all the way through. I love the stuff that you said about Bruce Lee and that you didn't belittle him to build yourself up, that you just talked about what happened factually. And I'm going to write this down on the board. I write things down all the time in here. There's no honor in kicking a dead lion. Like, that's something that everybody should think about. There's no honor in kicking a dead lion. That's a great thing to think about. I like what you said about the 10 questions, your forward punch, you know, angles, and Sensei Legacy and I were kind of smiling at each other while you were talking about that stuff. And that George Matheson saved your life, that man saved your life. I'll tell you, you're not the only person who's ever said about Wally Slokey that you wish that he's the one. Lots of people talk about Sensei Slokey, and yeah, I'm totally bought into that.
Yeah.
Honesty, integrity, kindness, confidence. I think about those things. People ask me all the time as a teacher, like, you know, how will you teach my kid to be honest and to have integrity, kindness, confidence, respect? You know, you talk about it. I'm going to teach them by teaching them how to fight. Like, they're going to learn all those things by learning how to fight. And the last thing I want to say is, you know, just give Mother Earth a chance to catch her breath. I think that's a really powerful statement. Like, give Mother Earth just a chance to catch her breath so we can all be here for a few more generations. Yeah. Those are my final thoughts. Sean?
You know, I just wrote down one thing, and it summarized for me so much of what you said. Just, that's a big contract. And I know you weren't talking about the money part of it. When that person comes to you and says, please teach me this thing that I only have imaginative concepts about because they've never done it, and they offer themselves to you and they follow you. And, you know, Hunch Legacy always says, find a teacher, do what they say. So when someone finds that teacher, they're doing it on faith in so many ways. And, you know, as I enter what I consider to be a next phase of my martial arts career, I really feel the responsibility of that contract. And when you said that, I got shivers. I thought it was really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the last word goes to you, Sensei, before we do a little wind up. Is there anything you want to just say as a goodbye?
Yeah, well, my dad was many things over and above being an alcoholic. He was my hero. He was a very disciplined man. He never drank until he came home from the war. So he spent majority of his life sober, raising a family, working hard, and he always worked hard. And when things got really bad, he obviously had to go to the bottle or he wouldn't have survived, right? Memories were too terrible about the Second World War. So him and I were together. Whatever he had, if there was one slice of bread left, I got it. With one egg left, I got it. Mm. You know, my job was looking for butts, trying to find cigarettes for him so he could break them up and make himself a cigarette. You know, and he would make a big thing if I brought him a handful. It would be praise. He would find every reason to praise me in our poverty. If I brought him a tin can of water, he would praise me. That would be the coldest water. That would be the best water that he'd ever have. And he would stop and make sure that I knew that. And he always told people, he said, you guys have lots of things in your life, but I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you the most wonderful thing in the whole world. And he'd say, son, come here. So he did that. And he believed in me in that way. And that's what kept me surviving through the system. Now, I've always taught Aboriginal people for free. Today, we offer all free classes for anybody under 18 years old. So our boxing gym, anybody under 18 comes in for free. Anybody that's having difficulty making tuition, we'll work with them. And of course, the martial arts is pretty well free nowadays, because the guys I've been training with now have been with me for 45 years, 40 years, right? They're 8, 9, 10th degree black belts. So they're people that I've known all my life. So it's when you're into martial arts, you have a huge family, you know. And it's when I run a seminar, if I run a seminar in the States, it'll sell out within an hour to 2 hours, and they'll ask me if I want to do an extra day, you know, and I'll go in there and it'll be like 120 people, right, per seminar. So it's overwhelming. It's awesome to be able to have that type of following, to have everywhere else but home, right? Yeah. So here at home, I'm me. That's who I am. I've always been the same person to my family. I'm obviously the most favorite uncle to everybody. You know, so I love all my family. I love all my nieces and nephews and my cousins, and I got so many brotherhoods and sisterhoods in the martial arts. It's just amazing. I could go on a journey for 10 years and be welcomed in so many different homes around the world. It's just crazy. I got 3,700 actual written birthday wishes. It takes me like 3 days and my wife helping me to answer them all. You know, it's just crazy, right? So, and I have 5,000 friends on Facebook, and I said, well, I got to make room in there, and I know everybody that's on there. You know, I said, okay, I'll get rid of 10. I can't get rid of 5. You know, it's crazy because I know everybody that's there from around the country. So it's very, 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 very nice life that I've had, and been in a very unique position. I was born at the right time, and I got into the martial arts at the right time, being in the right place at the right time.
Right on.
That's it.
Thank you so much, Sensei. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this. And I just want to say a real quick thanks before I throw it over to Sensei Dauphin to talk about next week to Robert Schlumsky, Mike Russell, Victoria Feth, Justin Shea, Alden Adair, and Andrei Sedashev, because they run this show behind the scenes. Sensei Dauphin?
Yeah,
Thank you guys. Thank you guys behind the scenes.
Yeah, they always deserve a big thanks, Sensei Maloney. Next week we're going to do a host chat, and the week after that we're going to talk with Benoit de Lestour, who If you don't know who he is, he's Jean-Yves Thériault, the Iceman's protege. He's the guy, he's the heavyweight amateur kickboxing champion of the world, and super nice guy. Sensei Legacy and I've been in his dojo a couple times. Super nice guy, and that's what's happening. Regardless of that, Sensei Maloney, thanks. I think I learned more on this call than any call before this call. And thank you.
It's interesting. It's interesting with the UFC and those types, because we still have a lot of the UFC guys and the world champions coming to our boxing gym to learn to stand up, right? And that's just a lot about them wanting to really learn to stand up properly. And some of them are world champions, Chris Kalidas, Gavin Tucker, those type of guys, right? They're local heroes, right? So it's awesome that they'd come and train here and want to take Bridget, their trainer, to Vegas, and wanted to take her on a world tour to Russia and different areas to be in their corner when they fight. So shows you that we're still doing what we've always done, and we're always associating with people that are making it real and testing it every day. And we got to stay sharp, and we got to continue to be testing. We can't live on what I did back in 1968, 1965. Things have changed since then. People are running faster, jumping higher, swimming further, and fighting better than we did back then. And people have to acknowledge that. We got better fighters today than we had back then. And it's our jobs to make them better again and to grow with that. And that's really, really important. If we stayed back where we were then, and people say, "Oh yeah, no, the old days, the old style, this and that, bang." No.
Well,
the new guys are the new gunfighters. They're the guys that are responsible for getting it done nowadays. But the courage, the internal, is still the same. That has to be there, no matter what you teach a person. That has to be there. So mind, body, spirit still has to be one.
That's a great note to go out on, Sensei.
I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, you were teaching us in the beginning. It's good that you taught us in the end. So thanks, everybody.
I would really appreciate it if you said hi to all the guys in your gym and tell them I keep up watching as much as I can on Facebook.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we got some national champions in there and some really good fighters. I mean, these guys tested every night, man. They're in there.
All right. We'll see you soon then.
It's a violent sport, but that's the way it's got to be done. Okay, guys.
Thanks, Sensei.
Thanks, Sensei.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
I really appreciate it.
Good night.